Hey, it's James at the EverLearner here. Thank you for joining me. This tutorial is all about practice mode. So look, I've got my course here, Educash GCSE P921. I'm logged in as student Hermione Granger. And basically I want to go and do some practice. As you know here, I haven't actually started this course just yet. But I want to go into my course and somewhere in here I want to do some questions. I want to get started. And I feel a little bit like skeletal system is important to me. I've watched a bit of the tutorial, but I don't want to take tests just yet. I want to have a little go at having some practice. And by hitting here, I can do exactly that. So I go into this practice. There's no pressure here. You can take your time and use your notes to help. This is about learning, not testing. This is about learning, not testing. So nobody's going to be looking at my scores. A little bit more about that in a second. But I go in here, start to notice a couple of things. First of all, if I'm stuck, I can go back into the skeletal system anytime and study this. Like I've only watched 10% of 11 minutes, 25 seconds. I've only watched a little bit. So I can go back and watch this if I need to. I can flick between practice and between tutorials very, very, very easily. Secondly, what you might notice if I click on notes here, I've got a whole series of notes about this topic area, about the supporting framework, about protection, about muscle attachment, about blood cell production. And where did they come from? Well, I made those notes next to the tutorial when I watched the tutorial. So if you want to know more about that, have a look at the making notes tutorial. But now I'm on my question. I have no time limit here. I can take as long as I want. I can ponder. I can use my notes and nobody's judging my response. So which of the following describe the role of bone marrow? Protection, production of red blood cells, carrying electrical impulses, production of white blood cells, provides muscle attachment sites. So I'm going to go for those two, and I get my answer right, and I get feedback within this environment, so I keep going. Next question, which word describes the role of the skeleton which is responsible for surrounding vital organs? Well, vital organs and surrounding them is about protection. So I get the skeleton protects the vital organs. And we keep going. Complete the sentence by filling in the gaps. Flat bones such as the ilium and cranium provide something for vital organs. Now, we know it's protection because I just had a similar question. Protection. Look at my note over here. Protection is provided by flat bones. Okay, maybe my note could have been better if I'd given examples. But now I can put my response in and I get my mark. You see how being in practice is a good place for a student, but I'm going to keep going. Complete the sentence by filling in the gaps. The skeleton and muscles work together to produce what? Okay, so I'm going to have a little look down mine. Now it's got leverage, minerals, blood cells, muscle attachment. They're specialized for force transmission. Specialized surfaces for force transmission. The skeleton muscles work together to produce, it could be force, but it could be movement. I'm going to try force. Is it going to get it right for me? It was movement. Okay, so again, I learn from that experience and I go on. Which word describes the role of the skeleton which is responsible for providing muscle insertions and carrying out sporting actions? Muscle insertion, specialized surfaces, muscle attachment is provided by tendon sites. Okay, so this is all about movement. And I keep going. True or false? The bone marrow produces red blood cells but not white. Well, what have we got here? We've got bone marrow. Where's my bone marrow? Blood cell production happens in the bone marrow. Red blood cell production is called erythropoiesis. Now I haven't made my notes well enough. I haven't noted, is it white and red blood cells or just red blood cells? So I'm going to follow my notes and I'm going to say it's true. Bone marrow doesn't produce white blood cells. You and I both know that's wrong, don't we? But I'm going to say this is true because my notes were not up to speed. And I get it wrong. So this is where it's going to stimulate your students to make really high quality notes when they're in a tutorial, because when they then come into practice, it's going to be super, super easy for them to have a go. Which of the following parts of the skeleton provides the role of protection? Okay, and I've got to choose multiple here. So that does, and that does. And this is a joint for movement of the ankle. So I'm going to submit those three. You're starting to get the idea. I'm using these examples. I'm using my notes. Which word describes the role of skeleton which is responsible for storing iron and calcium? Down here, look, what have I got? Minerals are stored in the skeleton. Iron for transporting O2 on HB, calcium for building hard tissues. Mineral store. And I keep going. Now, if I get enough answers correct in a row, I'm going to be prompted to switch to test mode. But importantly, I can switch to test mode whenever I want. Okay? I can switch to test mode whenever I want. But I'm going to go back to hear. Now, last thing from me, when we think about reporting this information, all we report in here is time. So this is a completely free space. If you're a student or if your students are in this space, we are not providing the results here to the teacher. This is purely for the learner. Okay, they just experience questions. But when they switch to test mode, this is when it starts counting. And if you combine that with things like assignments, teachers setting students assignments to go through test mode, what we should find is that students go and practice before they do their test mode assessments. And that is a great and beautiful student behaviour.